Games Workshop confirms rumor that Henry Cavill's Warhammer 40,000 production at Amazon could be scrapped. So, being the essentially origin points of this rumor, quotation marks, I figured it'd be about time to weigh back in on this, as I have been asked quite a few times as well if I have any news on the matter or if I can add any further illumination or information to it. And we're going to be using that Park Place's excellent little summary article here as a general guidestone of it. So, back in June, I made a video talking about a rumor that came from my Amazon insider source, suggesting that the development process of the 40K television show was not going particularly well. Now, in this annual report here that Park Place is referencing, mentions that Games Workshop and Amazon are working together for a period of 12 months, ending in December 2024, to agree to creative guidelines for the films and television series to be developed by Amazon. The agreement will only proceed if the creative guidelines are mutually agreed between Games Workshop and Amazon. We will update you accordingly. So this is a little bit corporatist and vague, to be sure, but from what I heard was that they were currently trying to develop a script, or at the very least a pitch that could be delivered to Games Workshop for them to approve. And I would imagine that this is kind of mentioning that, the creative guidelines, the film and television series. In other words, Games Workshop, of course, is going to want the final say over anything and everything, English, that is put into this television series, that it isn't violating the law or likely to cause them another shitstorm like the female Custodes debacle. Now, in my original video, I mentioned that there was a deadline that was already upcoming, that was very close to actually being passed, to produce this sort of a script, where they would either then have to go, okay, we've got something here that we're going to proceed with, or we're not getting anywhere, we're going to scrap it, or we are going to need to do another round of writing to come up with something useful. Now, it might be that this was a misunderstanding on behalf of my source, and that it was intended to be a 12-month period, but well, here's the thing too. Any 12-month period like this is going to include periods where Games Workshop actually needs to read over and check the work being produced by Amazon. So more than likely, there has already been one round of scripts produced that Games Workshop has not decided to get on board with, as that was my original source. Meaning that we are now at least on the second round of script writing to try and develop something that could be turned into a 40K television show, which is kind of interesting, because you'd think that creating a 40K television show would be facile, surely. I mean, the sheer amount of source material you could borrow from here is staggering. How many hundreds, if not thousands, of 40K books have already been written? If you simply wanted to adapt something, you could literally pick one off the shelves. Instead, then, they are presumably trying to go for some sort of original production. Now, this also makes sense because of what they've mentioned here. The report also detailed that if things do go well, Amazon has the rights to develop Warhammer Fantasy as well. Now that's interesting as well, but we'll get to that in a moment. Under the terms of the agreement, Games Workshop has granted exclusive rights to Amazon in relation to films and television series set within the Warhammer 40,000 universe, together with an option to Amazon to license equivalent rights in the Warhammer Fantasy universe following the release of the initial Warhammer 40,000 production. So this harkens back to a previous rumor that also came from my Amazon insider, suggesting that in his over-eagerness to sign a deal with Amazon, a Games Workshop or some intern or whatever had managed to sign off the exclusive rights to any cinematic or televised universe to Amazon. And that kind of sounds like it's also been confirmed now. And here's the thing. That, oh my god, could be an enormous mistake. Because if they have actually signed off exclusive rights to Amazon for the televised productions of this, they have in essence signed to Amazon the right to create their own universe. They can now in essence create their multiverse variant of Warhammer 40K and go, oh yeah, no, this is canon in the cinematic universe and so on. Now, luckily for Games Workshop, it appears that they still have, some veto rights over what is and isn't being put into this. Thank God, because otherwise Amazon would have had free hands to do well, to create their own variant of 40k, which is of course what they tried to do with the Rings of Power, where the primary goal of that television series was to undermine the Lord of the Rings and build Lord of the Rings, the Amazon universe, up in its stead to simply just subvert and subjugate the entire damn setting. This is a big problem for Games Workshop, as they could then, in essence, have lost the rights to, well, their very own television show. But the second part too, the Warhammer Fantasy universe, that sounds more like a little bit of a desperation move to placate shareholders. I think they understand that this sounds like very bad news. Like, okay, we've got an agreement that ends this year with Amazon. We haven't produced anything yet, and we've only got like, 5 months to do it. But hey, if it works out, we can totally sell them Warhammer Fantasy too. That's good, right? Yeah, we'll see about that, won't we? But why are they having such a hard time with this? Because again, you've got Warhammer 40,000. It should be super easy to create a product set in this universe, particularly when you've got Cavill on board, a genuine superfan. Now, they also mention some other rumors that I heard as well, that Cavill was not very happy at all with the female Custodes, but that he was also determined not to walk away from the project. So maybe they're dancing a little bit on eggshells around Cavill because he's pissed, and so they need to try and make something that both he'll be happy with, and Amazon, and Games Workshop. That could provide some issues, as Cavill is probably the most likely here to guard against any nonsensical law changes, as frankly, I trust his ass more than I do Games Workshop at this point. But here's another thing as well. Just the other day, we talked about Batman the Caped Crusader, or actually just Caped Crusader, because that is a different show. And it has a very interesting little thing to say about Amazon Prime, of course, and Amazon Production Studios in general. I mentioned already the Rings of Power. The Rings of Power was roundly lambasted as an awful adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, and as yet another strong whammon television series. Batman is the exact same thing, where the goddamn Batman is reduced to an ancillary supporting character in his own goddamn show, where the primary main characters and the draws are Barbara Gordon and Montoya. They're the ones who are actually doing anything and everything interesting in the show. If you want to know more about it, you can go watch yesterday's video, but this might then be a very good reason why they're having such a hard time creating a 40k show, because 40k is probably the single most masculine fantasy universe out there, science fiction, excuse me. You simply can't do that in 40k, and if you do, the show is going to be absolutely harpooned by anyone with even a modicum of sense. You can't go like, oh, okay, let's do Cypher's Kane, but what if the real hero is the commander of the Valhallans? She's female, right? What if she's the boss instead? What if Cypher's Kane is just kind of like a comedic relief character to her being all serious and useful and stuff? And I could see them do it. There was also, of course, the rumors surrounding the female Custodes thing. Now, the rumor I heard on this, and this is probably the position that I prefer the most as well, was that this was something that Amazon put forward as, in essence, a bit of a litmus test to Games Workshop. Like, hey, you know the Space Marines, right? They're super popular. Could we make one of those, but female? And Games Workshop was like, no, we've been trying to avoid this hot potato for like 10 years now. If we do this, we will not only sink the television series, we will sink the company. Did you see the backlash of female Custodes? Like, God, if we make a female Space Marine, we might as well file for bankruptcy. And then Carol, I was about to say, Amazon goes, all right, but we gotta have some female characters in here because that is literally Amazon Prime's sole singular focus. So, how about those Custodes? There's no lore explicitly stating they're all male, right? And Games Workshop was like, sorta pseudo-technically, but also not really. and that was then the sacrificial goat offered up to Amazon. That would be my preferred interpretation again, because the other one's like it was just a random intern who did this. Like, I would have expected some serious firings if that were the case, and some heavy lockdowns on their social media as well, or that it was Games Workshop idea, which, again, I'm pretty sure the company is smart enough to know that that would be a shit show without equal, well, without equal of the female Space Marines, at least. And that will absolutely explain this, because if Cavill is indeed heavily involved on the, process of writing and approving this, which God, I hope is true, then he's going to look at that and go, no, this isn't Warhammer 40k. Like, what do you mean Horus Lupercal wasn't, corrupted by Erebus, but Erebusia or something? And Games Workshop too, after seeing the female custodians thing, is probably also going to be rather hard-necked against this stuff, whilst Amazon is going to be pushing in from the exact opposite direction. Amazon wants to create another Rings of Power. They want to create another Caped Crusader. They want to abide by their programming and their literal contractually obligated diversity requirements. They have clauses in their agreements for hiring extras, etc., and supplies to Amazon Studios that they must be so-and-so diverse. They have a literal quota of women and minorities they need to force into anything they do. And again, in a show like 40k, where gender and race is simply just not a relevant topic, it is going to be very difficult to force that in there without it looking retarded. In all due likelihood, they're going to now try again. Games Workshop is probably going to start less. See, here's the problem too. GW, I damn near guarantee you, is either one or two things here now. Either they are so desperate for this collaboration that they are willing to sign away complete exclusive rights to film and television to Amazon, which, again, oh boy, would be an enormous mistake, or they're desperate to not have this agreement to go into effect, because, again, this is Amazon owning Games Workshop's balls and penis, and probably their liver as well, in a nice little purse that they can, hang around their necks here. Either GW is so desperate to get this collaboration through that they will accede to virtually anything in this second round of negotiations, or this second round of script writing, or they're actually going to deliberately try to torpedo this. That is one possibility. Another might be that Cavill is actually trying to get in the way, but we don't know how much power he has in the writing process, as he is supposed to be, executive producer or something? And if anything, anybody is actually likely to interject on behalf of the Lord in this, it would be Cavill. Especially, again, his primary army was the Custodies, so he's probably not super happy with GW or Amazon at the moment. But right, they now have until December this year to come up with something. So they've got 5 months to write a script that can be accepted both by Amazon and Games Workshop. It's starting to get a little bit urgent here. And again, I don't even know if that's possible. If we assume that Amazon Prime is going to do their same thing, which they almost certainly are, and Games Workshop are going to try and protect their IP, those two things are honestly virtually mutually exclusive. The only way this is going to move forward is going to be if one of them backs down, and I doubt it'll be Amazon. Especially as Games Workshop has a rather legendary track record of ruining every other multimedia product they've ever attempted. Remember the supposed Eisenhorn Inquisitor television show? Announced how many years ago now? I barely remember it. We haven't heard a peep out of that. And that has almost certainly been murdered somewhere quietly and carefully behind the scenes. Now this is going to be a significantly more difficult murder to cover up, but I would not be surprised at all if its blood does end up on the hands of GW and Amazon. So, not a whole lot of extra information there, but that is my update on the situation, and I mean, you know what, after Caped Crusader, I kinda hope it fails. I kind of hope we never see this 40k show, because if we do, well, hey, if nothing else, it's likely to be content, right? Silver lining and all that. Until next time, I've been Arch, thank you very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.